If there's one test that I feel the most stressed about is speaking part. Hi everyone, my name is Pradhan and in today's lesson we are going to be talking about IELTS speaking test. Yes, you heard it right. Speaking part is one such part where people fumble a lot, people get nervous a lot, and people start to feel quite underconfident the moment they enter the room of the examiner. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about first, this is part one of speaking test. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about first how to understand the structure and what speaking test is all about. And in the second part, we're going to be talking about the tips and tricks of the speaking test. Let's get started with this one. The first thing that I have for you is the duration of the speaking test. The speaking test basically lasts for 11 to 14 minutes in total. From the moment you enter into the examiner's room to the moment you come out of the room, it takes about 11 to 14 minutes. But what we also need to remember is we don't have to worry about this time duration. It will take whatever time it has to. It is just for the examiners to note that it shouldn't kind of elevate from 15 minutes in total, basically. So, just for our basic understanding, the total duration of the speaking test is 11 to 14 minutes. Let's come to the next part. The next part is number of parts. There are a total of 3 parts on the IELTS exam. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. In a little while, we will understand what is Part 1, 2, and 3 are all about. But the basic information is there are how many parts? 3 parts in total, absolutely. Let us now start talking about these 3 parts, basically. What each of these 3 parts are about in detail. The first part is called the introduction part. What is it called? It's called the introduction part. I will just write it for you here. In the introduction part, you come into the room and the examiner starts to question you about your personal life. Don't think about the number of time one gets divorced and personal questions, not those kinds of questions. Basic personal questions, where you are from, what do you do, what are your hobbies, what are your future plans. These are the various different kinds of questions that appear on part 1 of the introduction, part 1, which is the introduction of the speaking test. In this, the examiner basically asks repetitive questions. These questions are about what your name is. I'll just write it for you here. These questions are most of the times the same. They are about your name. They are about your family. They are about the job or study that you do or what you study. They are also about your hobbies. And finally, these questions can also be about your future aspirations. So these are most of the times repetitive. And you must prepare the answers of these questions already before entering the room. Not scripted, but at least you should know what you're going to be talking about if the person asks you a question on these basic 5 pointers in the introduction part 1. Let's move on to part 2. Part 2 has a lot of names, but let me simplify it to you. It is basically called the topic card round. What is it called? Topic card or cue card. So there's a card. There's a card, there's a piece of paper. The examiner gives that piece of paper to you. When that examiner gives that piece of paper, it has one question on it. And it has a couple of cues as well. Cues means certain points that you have to talk about. You have to keep in mind that that topic card is basically what that entire speaking test is, speaking part 2 is about. Basically, in that part, you have to speak on that topic for a minimum duration of 2 minutes. We need to understand something very important here. Why does the examiner or IELTS want us to speak for 2 minutes, it has a very important purpose. Imagine if you are if in your mother tongue you want to take somebody's test, do you think that the person speaks better language if the person speaks less of that language, or would you have better judgment of person's fluency if the person speaks more? Of course, you will give more marks to the person. You will think that the person knows language more if the person speaks more. And that is what this part of speaking test will test. The test wants you as a candidate to speak as much as possible, to make use of as many vocabulary as you have, as many words that you have, to make use of clear pronunciation, and most importantly, forgetting all the rules, just being fluent. Because it is not just about grammar, it is also about fluency. Are you able to communicate your ideas? This is what part 2 basically checks on the IELTS test. Please make sure that you speak for a minimum of 2 minutes before in the IELTS speaking part 2. A lot of people say, I do not have the watch, so how do I get to know if 2 minutes are over? Don't worry about it. Continue speaking. There is going to be a stopwatch if the watch is visible. Well, anyway, it's going to be visible. But if it's not visible, the examiner, and if you've spoken enough, the examiner will stop you automatically. And if the examiner stops you automatically, that is a good sign. That means you have spoken enough to the standards of the examiner and IELTS, and they want to continue the conversation, the interview, by asking you a couple of more questions. One very important thing that we need to remember is it is not a UPSC or any competitive exam. It is an exam that tests not your general knowledge, but your knowledge of English language, especially speaking. It is nothing about your content knowledge or knowledge of a particular subject. It is about, can you speak English? And if you can speak English fluently, without any fears and confidence, you automatically get a better band on the exam. So make sure that you keep in mind that rules are not everything. Above rules come fluency. So make sure that you keep that in mind. So part 2 is about topic card. You get a topic. For this, you have to speak for a minimum duration of 2 minutes. Another thing, very important thing that you have to keep in mind is you get preparation time in topic card round. The preparation time, prep time, is 1 minute. Please make sure that you utilize this 1 minute basically to prepare better for the IELTS speaking part 2. A lot of people start writing a script, but look at it this way. Can you write a complete script in just 1 minute for something that you have to speak on for 2 minutes? Nobody can, unless you're Chitty or a robot from any other film. So make sure that you utilize this time and write just the keywords that you want to speak about, talk about. So make sure that you do that correctly. Let's move on to part 3. Part 3 is called the discussion round. What is it called? It is called the discussion round. In part 3, the examiner asks you 1, 2, or 3 questions that are related to part 1. For example, if in part 1 the topic was traffic jam, so the examiner will ask you questions that are related to part 2, that are related to the topic, that are related to traffic jam. So you do not have to worry about basically what will come in that, because at least you know the context. If the context is traffic jam, the person will ask you questions related to traffic jam only. Another very important thing that we can keep in mind here is, again, my content knowledge is not checked. If you do not know the answer, just say I do not know the answer. Although there is language exponents and components that are used in that. So we'll have a lesson on that as well for you to understand how to answer questions like that. But important pointer here is, in part 3 discussion round, you have to speak again as much as possible. It's not content knowledge, but it's about speaking whatever you know about it, basically having a one-to-one conversation. For example, is this lesson scripted that I'm teaching? It is not scripted. I'm just talking about the basic ideas, my understanding of a particular subject. And that is what you have to do as well. You have to talk about your basic understanding of that particular subject, whatever you know. And those questions are quite personalized as well. It's not about what are the traffic rules in the UK. It's not about that. It is about what is your opinion of the traffic jams that are growing on roads these days. So these are personalized questions. All you have to do is speak from your experience. Let's recapitulate what we did in this lesson. The duration of speaking test is 11 to 14 minutes. Number of parts are 3. Part 1 is about introduction. You will be asked questions on these pointers. Most of the times people are asked questions on these pointers. You can prepare your answers accordingly. In part 2, it is called topic card. You will be given a topic. You will have 1 minute to prepare and you will have 2 minutes to speak on that topic. And finally, in part 3, it is called the discussion round. In this discussion round, you will have a one-to-one discussion with the examiner. You will get into a conversation and you will ask and answer questions. This was all about IELTS Speaking, Part 1, 2, and 3. In the next lesson, we are going to be talking about certain very important tips that I have for you, which will help you get better at your IELTS Speaking Part 1, 2, and 3 test. Thank you very much for being with me in this video, and I hope you enjoyed the lesson. In case you have any questions, please comment down below in the comment section, and I will cater to that. God bless, and may all your dreams come true.